Hello and welcome to another edition of Conversations of the Heart. It is your boy T Till. We have a special guest, very, very special, esteemed guest here. Friend of the show, um, incredible woman, um, Saya B. Hagin. She is a licensed school counselor, with the New York City Department of Education. She has a bachelor's in psychology. She has two master's degrees, one in education and guidance and counseling, as well as a master's degree in mental health counseling. And she also has her certification in family counseling and school administration. As well, she is an author of an incredible book um, called The Journey Continues. Um, I feel like I'm running out of things to say about you. You have a lot going on. You have a lot of things, um, a lot of accomplishments, and much needed in our community as well. To see representation in the mental health community and being an advocate. We definitely need more people like you to kind of step up to the plate and tackle some of these issues. So very much so appreciate you for joining me on this conversation, more so of a part two of this conversation that we had last season,
Yeah.
where you talked about your journey, through abuse and you detailed a lot in that part one of what you endured
Yeah.
um on that journey. And so today, we're going to be talking a little bit about that, but more so about the journey after,
Yeah.
what happens. You've gone through a lot, right? And then what happens after. But first, I'll give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them what you do, and where they can find you, and where they can follow you, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I want to say that back for a part two. I really enjoyed our part one, so I'm happy to be back again. So I am Saya B. Hagan. Just like Terrence said, I'm happy to be back. I am a survivor author. I'm a mental health counselor. I'm also a school counselor, and I do advocacy work and support work for survivors. So I'm happy to be here. You can find me at Saya B. Hagan on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on TikTok and YouTube, starting to share some content there. I also have an Instagram page for Sanctuary for Survivors. That is for all survivors, whether you are male or female. And so that is who I am. Yeah.
So perfect. And you know what? I want to give the caveat here because when we first did the show, we met, through social media, whatever the case was. I forgot how we met, but we met through social media, and then, I think it might have been Clubhouse.
Yes.
Um, I think I saw one of my friends that was in your room, and then I went in your room, and then I joined one of the conversations, and then we connected, and then we had conversations, and I was a guest on your show on Clubhouse, then you became a guest on my show Conversations of Heart live on Instagram.
Yeah.
And finding out later, ladies and gentlemen, that she
You're
this
going to drop this?
lovely, I'm dropping it right now, that this lovely woman here is my cousin. And I never knew this. In the first episode, we did a whole episode about
Yes.
abuse, survivor, being abused by somebody that was in her family. And I'm
Yeah.
and I was sitting there like, oh my goodness, like hearing the story, and I was like, I couldn't believe. I was like, wow, like she's so strong. Like I can't believe somebody would do this in her family. Like, how does she overcome? And I'm thinking about this, and I think it was, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months later. I don't even know how many months later. It comes to fruition that we are actually cousins. And but I'll be honest with you, I couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier of one finding out that you're my cousin because we started to build a great relationship,
That's
um,
good.
from before
Yep.
and during those times, even before we knew. And
Yeah.
then once we found out, we've just been continuously building and, finding out years later that you have a cousin out there. And I know that
Yeah.
happens in Black families all the time.
Yes, it
Normally, but
does.
it normally happens on funerals or weddings, right?
Yes, it does. This is
This
a good
just
thing.
this just happened to happen through social media, and through friends and of how we met. And so look, so I just wanted to put that caveat out there. So, the first episode I didn't know I was talking to family. Funny how that works. Now I know I'm talking to family. Um, but nonetheless, I'm proud of her. I'm honored that she's here. I'm not just saying that because she is my family now. I said that on the first episode, when I didn't know that she was family. She's phenomenal. She's doing amazing things in the community. So I just wanted to I thought that was a fun fact for everybody out there.
That
So
was definitely a
not gonna
fun
lie to
fact.
you. You mess with her though, you mess with me. I'm just saying she's fam. That's just the way it's gonna be. But nevertheless, now that we got that out the way, appreciate you again. Appreciate you, Cuzzo. Um, and yeah, so going through this process um of survivorship, and the one thing I do notice about you is when you have videos, um, you have content,
Hmm.
you address everybody as a survivor.
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, I think everybody is a survivor, particularly
Mm-hmm.
as we are slowly starting to come out of COVID, right? Um, we're in it, but
Mm-hmm.
not there as we were. But everybody has their own experience of experiencing and going through some form of trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So although my audience is primarily women and some men, right? Because
Yeah.
what we talked about earlier in regards to domestic violence and
Mm-hmm.
sexual
Mm-hmm.
trauma is does not it's not just those two areas. Trauma includes the loss of a loved one, the loss of a child. Like, so there's so many different types of survivors. So when I do address my audience, when I'm doing a live or when I'm putting out a post, I always say, hey, survivors, because I do feel like we are all survivors. We have all gone through something and come
Mm-hmm.
out the side. Maybe we're still working through something, but we're still here. So the
Mm-hmm.
fact still here, we're survivors. So that's why I address my audience like that.
And that's so true. And it's like we always go do one thing to another. So you mentioned we're still in COVID, but we're kind of coming out. I don't know. Seems like there's always
Oh,
something new.
yeah.
And then now we got the monkeypox.
The monkeypox. Yeah, that's what I was going to mention.
And
Now it's monkeypox.
you
So
know, so that thing crazy. But that's another story for another day. But yeah, I don't want that. Whew. But so going through like being, sexually abused and things like that, and it's very traumatic.
yeah.
Obviously for anybody who is sexually abused. Um, it is traumatic
Mm-hmm.
on a lot of different levels, obviously, physically and mentally, emotionally, especially when you're young,
Yeah.
right? Even as an adult, obviously, it's still the same, but when this happens to you when you're young, I
Mm-hmm.
assume that there's a lot of stages that you go through, right? I've had unfortunately I have spoken to some other people who have been or who have gone through this,
Mm-hmm.
and it ranges from the severity of the spectrum, right? There are people who have been like raped, and then there are people who were just kind of just taken advantage of, right? Like, and like it may not have gone to the actual that particular act, but it could have
Mm-hmm.
been close,
Yeah.
um, or whatever the case is, and it's still amazing how it's has shaped their lives,
Yeah.
um, on a lot of different levels. No matter what the severity is, just that moment, they'll never forget where they were at that moment and at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that changed how they interacted with men, um, or women,
Yeah.
depends, right? And it just completely changed them and how they looked at things and how they act towards things and how they communicate um with the opposite with the opposite sex as an adult now, the trust issues, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different things that they go through, so this show is about really navigating those waters,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And coming from somebody who has went through this unfortunate event,
Mm-hmm.
and also now is on the mental health side,
Mm-hmm.
which is amazing to even say. Right, in a sense of being able to, being a mental health counselor, right? After everything that has happened with you. So how does one kind of begin? Let's start at the beginning. Be kind of like, if you were a young lady, or when
Mm-hmm.
you were a young lady, like, what advice would you give to a young lady to say, where do I begin to heal, or begin this journey to start again? You right, because you see, it seems like your life can stop,
Yeah.
right?
So I think the I always say the first part of the healing journey is acknowledging. You have
Mm,
to be able to acknowledge that the event has happened. In order for you to acknowledge it, you have to understand that there has been an impact. And a lot of times when abuse happens at such a young age, so I was 12 and 14 when my abuse happens. So it wasn't just a moment for me, it was moments, right? And it
right.
was two different individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the acknowledgement. So I think for my age at that time, I was able to acknowledge that happened because, as I said, when we had our conversation previously, that I had to tell my parent, I had to tell my
Mm-hmm.
parent what had happened, and as I remember, I could not verbalize it. I had to write it, right? But I had to get it out. I had
Mm.
to tell them in some way, shape, or form. So I
Wow.
think it always starts with acknowledgement. But I would say that as I got older and I grew
Mm-hmm.
into a young adult, that's when I really started to understand the impact of the abuse, right?
Wow.
So I knew this happened to me. I knew that it was not supposed to happen. I knew it was wrong. I knew the person who did it was wrong and they should not have done it. But as far as the impact it had on me and on my life and how I viewed relationships, how I interacted with people, it wasn't until I was like a young adult that I really understood the full impact. And when you have that understanding and there's acknowledgement along with that, then that's when you can start the healing process. And so all the things that you mentioned, I had trust issues. I had trust issues with men because I was abused by men, right? It could be
Mm-hmm.
different for somebody else depending on who you were abused by. But
Right.
because I was abused by men and men that I was supposed to trust that was within our family circle, there
Mm-hmm.
was a major trust issue.
Mm.
And it was primarily towards men, but as I got older, I realized it became really generalized, and it became with people in general.
Mm.
And so when you understand the impact that the abuse has, and sometimes that takes a while, right? Then that's when you can start, the healing, your healing journey. That's when you can start seeking support. Um, you can start trying to find your safe circles, people who are going to support you and not judge you,
Mm.
people who will be that listening ear, and people who are not trying to fix you, right? Because then
Mm-hmm.
those people who love us, right, who care about us, and people who always try to fix something. There's some things that you can't fix, right? There's some things that you just gonna have to allow the person to go through the process and just be there for them.
Mm. Wow. That's um well, that's good information too. And good advice. But where does one kind of just say, hey, finding safe spaces?
Mm-hmm.
I believe in general, people have to find safe spaces within family, within relationships, within friendships. There has to be safe spaces, right? But when you have trust issues because of something that happened so traumatic like that, how do you begin to trust again? How do you begin to build those safe spaces again, or find them? Because, like you said, then it became one, yes, about men, but
Mm-hmm.
now it's about both men and women. Generally, I don't trust you guys. because
Mm-hmm.
I was betrayed. You're betrayed
Mm-hmm.
by
Yes.
somebody that was close to
Yep.
you. So that
Yep.
means, it could be a woman or a man, somebody close to you, and now you just have those issues, those trust issues. Um, so how did you begin to create or get those safe spaces or those people of trust, so that you could begin that process of learning how to trust again? Like, how did you overcome that? And then how did you begin to build your safe spaces within your own village?
Mm-hmm. So like I said, the impact of the abuse wasn't really clear to me until I became a young adult.
Yeah.
So for me, my place of healing started at church, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one day I was sitting in service, and the pastor was preaching this particular Sunday about chains being broken, and it was
Mm.
regarding abuse, women who had been abused.
Wow.
And, of course, they had altar call, and for those who needed prayer to come to the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that happening, I had a lady who was interning with me, and, she had a conversation, and she said, "Did you ever think that your mistrust of men stemmed from your abuse?" And I was
Mm.
like, hmm, I never really thought about it that way before. I said,
Mm.
that's what I want to pray about. I'll think about it. And I said, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
That following Sunday, that following Sunday, I went to service, and the word was like, I don't remember the exact title, but chains being broken. And I knew that was my time to come to the altar and to start my healing. Now, I didn't know how that was going to look like, right? So for all of our churchgoers, it was the messy, snot crying, falling out on the altar to, and it wasn't even a come to Jesus moment, because I had already came to Jesus. It's what this was like. This is the time of your healing. So this is where you're going to have to start with the healing process. So that's, for me, that was my healing. That was the start of my healing journey. And then from there, I sought therapy. So as you heard me say, my intern had mentioned that to me, about my issue, my mistrust of men. So I would, for me, that's where my place of healing started. But it always starts with that one person you can trust, right? So everybody has one person, and whether you are a teen, a young adult, or just an older adult, you have that one person that you can talk to. You have that one person who can hear you, who will not betray you, and will not share what is confidential. And if you don't have anybody else, that one person, that's where you start, because it's something about the healing process that starts when you start verbalizing what has happened to you. And prior to us doing that, it's just ruminating in our heads. We'll just go over it over and over and over again. We can also write it down. That's another form of release and starting the healing process. But it usually starts with that one person. And hearing yourself say it to somebody else is a very powerful tool. So, we can have it in our head. We know, like, this happened to us, but for us to verbalize it and to share it with somebody else, that's another level, because now you're hearing yourself saying that. And same thing as writing it. Now you're reading your thought instead of it being, in your head over and over again. As I say, the tape that continues to play. So you have to find out what works for you, and like
Mm.
what have is available to you. Sometimes it's just that one person.
Mm.
Sometimes it's what happened to me. There was to me, that was intent. That was God's intent, and him leading me to my healing journey. It
Right.
wasn't a coincidence that I had this conversation with, my intern. And then that same Sunday, this word was preached that had me started on my healing journey. So if everybody is different, but everybody has that one person
Mm.
that they go to, and they can say, hey, this happened to me, you
Mm.
know and that just opens the door, because even expressing that to that person opens the door. Yes, it may be painful, and I'm not saying that it's not going to be, but it is a form of, it's no longer just in my head. Now I have actually verbalized it to somebody. And it's so many believers. I mean, I'm sorry, there's so many survivors who have not taken that one simple step.
Mm.
It's still playing the tape in their head over and over again about this is what happened to me. And I'm talking about this may have happened 10, 15 years ago, but they're still
Yes.
playing that tape in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they're holding on to it. So that's why that conversation, whether
Mm.
it's writing it down, verbalizing it to somebody, having that is so powerful because we will just hold on to it.
Mm.
That I would say start there.
Wow.
Start with that
Uh,
one person.
Starting with the one person, you were in church, and also therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
you know,
started with it started with me being in church, and then I
right.
started therapy thereafter. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. And so I always have a saying, it's God and therapy.
absolutely.
You can do both.
You can do both. Can
You
you say it
know,
again, please?
yes,
God,
God and therapy. You can do both
you can do both.
because you I know one thing that you guys do both is you do God and then you go to your doctor. If you're not feeling well, you go to your doctor. You don't just sit home and you got a fever of 102 or whatever the case is, or you're not sitting there with a broken arm just saying, well, no, we're just gonna let God fix it. Nah,
Mhm.
your arm hanging off, your arm hanging off like this. You already know what you're doing. You going to
Yes,
the doctor to get that thing put back in place,
that's
right?
right.
So with our mental health
Mm-hmm.
and with our traumas, we've got to get past stigmas about mental health. And oh, you're not a believer if you go seek a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, they're gonna medicate you. No, like you gotta understand what mental health and counselors and therapists are about. Not
Yeah.
every therapist and not every counselor is gonna medicate you.
Yep.
Like that's
Very
something
rarely does
different.
that happen. Like
That's
that's
something different. Like
different. Yeah.
that could be a psychologist or psychotherapist, whatever the case is. Like that's more or less what they do. Um, but we're talking about therapists, counselors, things that you need to unpack your trauma with. These
Yeah.
people can give you tools. These
Yep.
people can give you tools. They are licensed professionals to give you the tools. A lot of times, yes, your pastor is there for counsel for certain things, to
Mm-hmm.
give you certain words of wisdom, motivation, scripture. Cool,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need that. That's
Yes.
great. But when it comes to this mental health thing, they're not equipped. I'm gonna be honest. They are not equipped. They're not licensed to
Takes
deal
a
with
special training
certain
for
things.
yep. Yep.
Depression, anxiety, trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like these are real life things. And that your job is to pray to find you or guide you to the right therapist, to the
Mm-hmm.
right counselor. Okay,
Exactly.
that just like you do with your regular PCP, your regular
Yep.
primary care physician, you say, Lord, please let me get the right one. Lord, bless the hands of the doctors that's about to do
Yes.
this procedure.
Yes.
Yes, that's what y'all do.
Yep.
So it's the same thing for your mental health,
Yep. Same
especially
thing.
in our community. We got to stop with this stuff. Like, oh no, when it comes to mental health, if I go see a therapist, that means I don't got no faith. That means I don't have any faith. That means I'm not as good as a Christian. That means I'm a baby Christian. We got to
Yep.
stop.
That and that's such a big stigma, particularly for, Black people. Um, it's and it prevents us from, you know, being healed. It prevents us from getting the help that we need. And like you said, it's something it, I believe it's starting to change, but we've always had the belief of, okay, so if I go to therapy, that means I'm crazy. Right? That's been a stigma for a very long
Years.
time. And then it's the whole thing. If I go to therapy, that means I don't believe in God, which is so not true, right? So not
Mm-hmm.
true at all. So those are like two stigmas that are really hurting us as a community, hurting us as Black people. Because,
Mm-hmm.
and then the whole thing of here's the other big one. Shh, we don't talk about family stuff. Whatever goes on in the house stays in the house, right? We're not
Nonsense.
talking about that. What you talking about that for, right? So
Mm-hmm.
family secrets is another. I have a
Wow.
for family secrets, and the journey continues. Like, shh, hush, don't talk about that. We're not talking about that, right? So family
Mm-hmm.
secrets are such a hindrance and hurt black families, and they hurt Black communities. You need to talk about the stuff
We
that is
really
going on, that
we
is hurting you, that
mm-hmm.
you're being impacted by. And we're very proud people, and I totally get that, but we need to start um, seeking the support that we need in order to be healthy,
Mm-hmm.
more healthy individuals. So when we're more healthy individuals, we're more healthy moms, we're more healthy dads, we're able to have healthy relationships with
Mm.
our children, because
Mm.
it goes on, it goes on, it impacts everything, because when we don't deal with trauma, it impacts other areas of our lives. It's not going to stay in one little bubble and
Nope.
stay isolated in one area of our lives. It doesn't work like that. Trauma
No.
impacts every part of our life. And so we need to come away from the, okay, we don't talk about stuff, that we don't talk about family business, or we're not talking about that because it happened so long ago. It definitely needs to be talked about, whether it happened 5 years ago or 15 years ago. If it's impacting you and how you function, how you raise your children,
Mm.
how all of that, it needs to be talked about. And so that's a couple of stigmas that we deal with in the Black community that has really been detrimental to us as a community.
It has. And and what people say, what happens in this house stays in this house. One, is a lie. Um, because the problem is the people that's in the house end up leaving the house and they move out.
Yes.
Your kids move out. So let's just
Mm-hmm.
say you got a family of 4 or 5. Sometimes people like having big families, even if it's 2 or 3, whatever. All the trauma that's been in that house, they move out and they create what? Different houses.
Yep.
It could be in many different places. It could be in San Diego. It could be in Las Vegas. It could be in Atlanta, New York, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they create new houses.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that
guess what?
trauma goes with them.
That trauma doesn't stay in that old house that you grew up
Yep.
in. Trauma is in the new houses.
Yep.
And then you create those issues and problems. And it's
Mm-hmm.
passed down to generations. And then now you have kids and then you pass it down. Now they go out,
Yep.
right? You want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about multi-level marketing, those pyramid schemes and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's exactly what happens. It goes from house to house to house to house to house, right?
Yeah.
And we have a generational trauma that continues and that grows and it spreads like a cancer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And these are things that we've really got to get a hold of because we don't have the same energy for physical ailments.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you have it's like I said, a broken leg, you're not gonna have a problem going to the doctor. You're gonna take yourself and you're gonna go. You're not gonna say, "Oh, I don't want to seem weak. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to seem like God's not gonna heal my leg."
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna do that. You're gonna take yourself and you're gonna go to the doctor. If your kid is sick and running a fever in the middle of the night, you're gonna get yourself up and you more than likely gonna take your child to the emergency room to see
Yep.
what's going on,
Yep.
right? But when it comes to mental health, oh no, oh no, oh no, no, no. That doesn't happen in this house.
Mm-hmm.
You're
And we
lying.
hide it and we cover it up, and and we think by not talking about it, it's going to go away. It does not go away. It does not go away at all. Matter of fact, it manifests itself in so many different ways. But it does not go away. Out of sight, it does not mean out of mind. It does
It
not mean
it
at all.
doesn't. Though
Mm-hmm.
men are dying at an early age, health complications, heart attacks, things like that, stress, strife. Nobody wants to talk about certain things that's building up within them, that's
Mm-hmm.
holding them in here and up here. You got all
Yeah.
types of stress and traumas and triggers that's paying rent here and here. They got whole real estate, land, all in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yep.
People don't want to discuss the traumas that's in their families because if you would discuss it, you'd find out your uncle was a molester. You find out your stepfather was an abuser.
We're
The
not gonna.
secrets come out.
Family secrets are so dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, particularly in Black families, we have, Uncle so and so that passed away, and then
Mm.
we find out when that uncle passed away, like all of this stuff, and you're like, what? When did
When
this
did this
happen?
happen?
Family secrets are hurting Black families. They are hurting Black families. And if we continue to think that, oh, we're not talking about this, and like I said, out of sight is out of mind, but it's no,
Mm.
no. Yep. We are not going to be healthy that way. We can't be healthy. And when I say healthy, I mean mentally and physically.
Right.
So we cannot be healthy if we're carrying secrets.
Yeah, we go to the gym, looking good, six packs and muscles everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's like, I'm bad, or yeah, I'm handsome, or oh, look at
Mhm.
this. I like, what I mean, I look good. Like it's like that's beautiful. But internally, you're in turmoil,
Yourself. You are.
mentally, emotionally,
Yep.
right? And yes, there is a place for giving it to God. Wonderful,
Mhm.
wonderful. Give it to God. But go get some help too,
Yep.
please.
Work hand in hand.
Because if I'm not mistaken, the good book says faith without works is dead.
Work is good. Yep.
That's what it say.
Activate your faith. And that's part of it. That's a part of activating your faith.
Right, right. That is a
Mhm.
whole part of activating your faith. You know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause if that's the case, half of y'all wouldn't have went to college. You would have just said, "Well, I'm gonna go ahead because you all right." Because look, you got a bachelor's and two masters, right? If it was just about just, hey man, I'm gonna have faith for these degrees right here. Okay, I'm gonna have faith for these degrees. They're gonna pop up right here tomorrow. I'm gonna get a
Mhm.
bachelor's. I ain't even gonna have to pass these tests.
Yeah.
I ain't gotta study nothing. I'm just gonna have faith that I'm gonna
Yeah.
get these bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. I ain't gotta study nothing, and
Yep.
it's gonna magically appear.
Nope. Doesn't
That
work like
that that's not how it works.
nah. Not at
Okay,
all.
okay. Because you have to do
At
what?
all. You have to activate your faith.
You have to activate your faith, and you have to put in the work.
Work. Yep.
You
And
have
that's
to
what
go seek that out. You have to go seek that out. You have to go seek out the information. You have to go to school. You have to do all those things to get the things that you needed to get. It's the same thing with your mental health. Seek
mm-hmm.
God, seek wisdom and knowledge and understanding, yes, but
And
go
seek therapy.
seek help
Yep.
and just pray that God guides you to the right people and
And
God guides you to the
understand
right
that.
safe spaces as well, the right friends, the right safe spaces, the right people to talk to. Like, come on, people.
Yeah, and also understand that as you are seeking therapy and you're going to therapy, you're attending therapy regularly on a regular basis. That usually means weekly. Let me just say that you will
Not
have to do
monthly.
some work, not monthly, not oh, I haven't been in therapy in 3 months. Let me try to go and think it's going to work. It doesn't work like that. You have to put in the work. You have to. It is going to be hard. It's work because you're dealing with traumas. You're dealing with things that you have held on to for years. So I think a lot of people have this impression about therapy that it's like, oh, it's like a magic wand and I wave it and I'm going to be. No, it doesn't work like that. It's work just like anything else. So
Mm-hmm.
please don't go into a therapy center or go see a therapist and think that it's going to be a 1, 2, 3, I'm healed, I'm walking out the door thing. It doesn't work like that. You have to put in the work, and part of it is showing up for your sessions.
Yes. And
So
Talking to your spouse is not therapy. It might make you feel better. And it's good that if you have a spouse that you can talk to. Absolutely. Talk to your spouse, but they're not a therapist. And the one thing that you don't want to do is ending up just feeling like you're dumping on your spouse or dumping on your friends and just dumping all of the stuff that you have all on your friends. And then a lot of times you end up bleeding all over them because you're not healed yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, your husband or wife is there to comfort, to discuss, to be there for you through thick and thin, through sickness and health. Absolutely. But you got to do the work to get healed. They can't heal you. You know what I'm saying? Like they can't heal you. Like you've got to put in the work to make sure, you know what I'm saying, that you're getting the help that you need. In addition to them giving you safe spaces. Because what's the point of having a safe space if you're not putting in the work at therapy and you're not like what is the whole point of this? Because you're
And then
just gonna keep going in circles.
there's also many different forms of therapy. There is individual therapy, and then there's like group therapy or
Mm-hmm.
support groups, right?
Yes.
So a lot of survivors, they will attend support groups. I will say if you are just starting your healing journey process, you need to attend both, right? You need to have your individual sessions with your therapist,
Okay.
and having a support group is like you said, is creating that safe space.
Mm,
So feel like you are not by yourself because there are other people in the group that have experienced somewhat what you have experienced and gone through. So a
mm,
lot of times when we're dealing with trauma, we feel like that we are by ourselves. So
mm,
sometimes support groups can kind of help us in that regard, that we are not alone, and and there's somebody else in the group that I can relate to. So
mm,
if you are starting your healing process, I definitely encourage you to attend therapy and also find a support group. Have those people in your life that you can identify as safe spaces that you can talk
mm,
to, without trying to fix you, right?
mm,
Because sometimes we want to fix things. We want to um, make everybody feel good, right? And I don't want them to go through this pain, and that's not what it is. That
right.
person has to go through their own process. They
Mm,
have to go through their own process of healing. And so allow them to do that, be that space for them, to be that listening ear for them, but you can't go through that process for them. They have to
mm,
go with themselves. So therapy is important, and finding a support group is also important. So you don't feel like that you are alone, that, there are other people. That's why survivor groups are so powerful, right? And that's one of the reasons why I provide, I advocate for survivors in regards to creating safe spaces, because there are so many people who have held on to their abuse, and because, as I said before, society is not kind. Um,
mm,
it's been a little better, but society overall has not been kind to survivors. There's a fear of not wanting to share what I've gone through, because there's a fear of I won't be believed. Like, they're not going to hear me.
mm,
They're not going to listen to me. And that's why survivor groups are so important. And that's why having safe spaces are so important. But you can't deal with this by yourself. You need support.
mm,
You need people around you that's going to support you and encourage you. You need a plan. Also,
mm,
when I say a plan, on those days that you feel like you're having a lot of triggers. A trigger would be something that brings you back to your place of abuse. That it could
mm,
be a smell, it could be a conversation, it could be anything that triggers you. So having a plan, when we're talking about like life after abuse and moving forward after abuse, you need to have a plan. So what happens when you are triggered? What is your plan? Maybe I need to call one of my support people and let them know what happened, and say, hey, this happened to me today. I'm being triggered. Can I just, share? Right? Can I share with you what's going on? Oh, I need I need to calm down. Can you just, help me through this? So having a plan and having those people that you can identify um, is so important, that can create that space. So I will give you an example. Um, I would say about 2 years ago, not so long ago, right? So like I said, my abuse happened when I was 12 and 14 years old. But even now, having those things in place continues to help me in regards to my healing process. So there are going to be things that you're going to have to do, right? Even as you are walking in your healing, when you feel like, okay, I'm fine, there are going to be things that trigger you no matter what. It's just what are you going to do? So this example is I had a GYN appointment and my regular doctor was not there because I went to the wrong office. And they offered for another GYN to see me. And I was triggered. Why? Because I was accustomed. And one of the things that you will find about survivors is that, once we get comfortable with something, certain changes will that it doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. So, like for example, a change in a GYN. For me, I was like, okay, no, no, right? So I'm coming to expecting to see my regular GYN, and they're saying, oh, so and so can see you. Now, so and so happens to be a male. Now, I already told you what my issue is with that, right? So I had to totally calm myself down because I was being triggered. And I felt like I wanted to flip over tables and chairs. And I was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you want to get your happy self down. You want to get yourself together
Yeah.
and you want to calm yourself. And I had to, and that's a lot of self-talk. You have to talk to yourself. Sometimes you have to talk yourself from the ledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're okay. You're fine. Nobody's hurting you. And this is the conversation that I had to have with myself. You're okay. It'll
Mm.
be right. And so I went to see the GYN. I was fine and I left. But after I left, I made that phone call to one of my support people. Hey, I got to talk. This is what happened to me.
Well,
I was triggered and I had to calm myself down. But that's from years of knowing what I needed and knowing when, what's going to trigger me. Now,
well,
I didn't expect that, right? Because if a lot of times if we anticipate something, we can plan for it, but you always have to have an emergency plan. And
mm,
that was the plan that I had to talk to myself. And a lot of times survivors have to do that. Like you're okay, you're safe, like you're not in any danger. And you can just try to calm yourself down. But that comes from years of practice. So having a plan is so important. Having someone that can talk to you, that will support you, that understand your situation. Um, it's also part of what you need, like moving forward in regards to like walking in your healing. That it's a tool, like, and that's what we use tools for everything else. We need tools when it comes to our mental health, and this is just a tool that we use. So
mm. Man, you giving out gems right now. I'm not gonna lie to you. Because I think a lot of people who are going through this, and this is men, women, right? And even young people, who will listen to this, it can really get something from this because everything that you're saying is absolutely spot on. And everything that you're saying, people have felt this before, but may not know how to navigate these
mhm.
waters. So one, I appreciate you, having this conversation because it's so important. Um, there are young women, young boys, who are being abused, unfortunately, right, every day, you know,
Every
um,
yeah.
and then even some of the adults that have been abused, like certain behaviors that they have now. It's because of that trauma,
Yeah.
right? And it's very unfortunate, um, and it's very sad, but the purpose of this is just to say, hey man, like how can we begin again? Because there's also, speaking of stigmas, there's also shame,
A
that
lot of
comes
shame.
that comes
Yeah.
along with this, and guilt, right?
Shame and guilt. Yeah.
That come along with being abused. And that's even crazy to say because it's like you were the one that's abused. So why do you feel shame? Why do you feel like this? You should be the one that doesn't feel like this. You should, the other person shouldn't feel safe. the other person should feel shame. They should
Mm-hmm.
feel hurt because of the actions that they did. But instead, it's the victim.
Yeah. So when I think
And
about,
mhm,
sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but when I think about guilt and shame,
mhm,
I think about like for a young child whose parents are getting a divorce, right?
mm,
What the child does is they automatically blame themselves. What did I do to cause mommy
mm,
and daddy not to be together?
that's good.
Maybe if I would have cleaned my room more, maybe if I would have did this, then mommy and daddy may not be getting a divorce. It's the same thing. We as survivors, we always blame ourselves for, and
Mm,
for survivors is, well, maybe if I didn't wear something, right? Or maybe if I didn't do so and so, then this would not have happened. And it happens continuously. So we carry that shame and guilt. And part of that healing process and seeking support and going to therapy is there is nothing that you've said or done that caused somebody to do this to you. And
mhm,
once we are able to actually hear it and embrace it and walk in that, because there's a hearing that, because we've heard that many times,
mhm,
right? And then there's like, okay, let me just really take this in, and honestly accepting it. That's when that shame and guilt starts to go away. But it's a process. But when I think about that, I always think about a young child who blames themselves, right? For their parents who are no longer together. It's like,
mhm,
I would have done. They start with, if I should have, or how come I didn't do. So that's also a process, but it's also something that is typical when it comes to survivors. We have that shame and guilt, and particularly like for in my situation where I was very familiar with my abusers, like they were relatives, right, or very
ah,
close family, um friends. Like, what did I do? Like, what
mm,
did I do to make them do this to me? And the honest truth is, you didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. There's nothing that somebody says or does that causes somebody to do this to them. But that's part of the healing. And having to hear it and to also embrace it and accept it and to say that I've not done anything. That's part of the healing process. And sometimes that takes a while. That
mm.
takes
And sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, shame comes from also could be religion, depending on what religion you are. Because some religions you're supposed to, well, of course, it's pure and this and that,
mm-hmm.
um, and then
Mm-hmm.
now, because I think when you're given to your husband, quote unquote, right, in certain, religions and things, it's supposed to be pure, right,
Yeah.
and so if you get sexually assaulted, the fear of admitting now that quote unquote you're no longer pure because of this.
Yeah.
Um, and that is something that could be problematic as well. That can cause shame and grief, um, and isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Because who can you go to tell? Because now, if you tell, your parents might find out. Your potential, I guess, when they no, I'm not gonna say matchmake, but when they set you up, right? Like now that family might find out too. Um, and that puts a lot of pressure on you because you're trying to keep up of this facade, right? That this didn't happen. And that
Yeah.
in itself could be problematic and
Yeah.
traumatic again,
Yeah.
right? One that you're living a lie, right? And that this didn't happen to you, but it
Yeah.
did. And sometimes you could want to scream and tell somebody so bad, because at first you may not want to. It could be easy to lie. It could be easy to just, oh, didn't happen, right? But then once you start to do the workout, and then once you begin to acknowledge, it's like, yo, you might want to tell somebody, right? But then it's just like, I can't.
Yeah. And that particularly happens like when we are, what like you said, the religious backgrounds of Okay, your skirt has to be below the knee, and if you don't wear your skirt below the knee, that means that you're being too what's the word, provocative. And so when we grow up in households like that, that
Yeah.
teachers think like that, then of course that promotes more shame
Mhm.
and guilt, because the day that I decided not to wear my skirt below my knees, and I wore it like above, you know, above my knee, this is when this happened to me. So it must be my fault.
Ooh, victim shaming,
Yes.
victim blaming, and you're blaming the victim, saying that this
Yes.
this happened because of this.
Yep.
Oh, see, that's disgusting on on
And
on
then
on, on
if
so many
you
levels.
finally, and if you go home and say something, and that continuously gets fed, if that person said, well, what did you have on? What were you wearing? You
Wow.
know, what did you expect that was going to happen? Because unfortunately, we still have households that are like that. We still have young girls who are being raised like that, you know, and that is like, if that's what my parents said, well, how am I going to say anything else? It was my fault. So they hold on to that secret, right? There goes the
Wow.
secret again. They hold on to that secret, and they never tell anybody. And then they grow up to be young adults who have unhealthy relationships and
Mhm.
can't, it just it's
Cycle.
a cycle. It's a vicious cycle that continues, and all because of, this is how I was raised. And when I did, and this is the fear of so many survivors, when I did want to tell somebody, or I said something to them, this is what was told to me. So why would I dare open my mouth and share it with anybody else again?
Wow. And which creates a whole nother level of trauma.
A whole re-traumatized. We are
Mhm.
then now re-traumatized. So I don't want to be re-traumatized again. So I'm not
Right.
going to say anything. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. So this is why survivor support is so important, and this is why even having these conversations with our young ladies are so important. And I'm not saying that etiquette and dress is not important. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we need to, if when we want to teach etiquette and dress, there's a way to teach it, right? But this is not the way. This is not, when we send that message, that's a wrong message.
I'm not gonna lie to you. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say this. This is just the views I'm about to say is expressed by just Tito. I don't care what she got on. Abuse is not okay.
No, it's never
I don't
okay.
care what she has on or what she doesn't have on. No is no.
No.
There's no rhyme reason for you to push yourself on somebody because of
Mm-hmm.
something that they have or don't have on, or her
Yep.
skirt is too, no, like I don't like, no. It's no. I don't care if she has on a mini skirt. It's no.
It's no. And I think one of the reasons why I said that is because I do believe, and there are people from, I think when we run in, where we get the problem from is when we do extremes, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we go to one extreme to another. Like you said, no is no, and it does not matter what she has on. Doesn't matter at all. Now we do have families, in the way that I was raised, there's a certain way that you should dress, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. There's a
Yeah.
place for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. There's a place for that.
Right.
However, no is no, regardless. And a girl or a young lady should not be should not feel guilty, or should not be referred to as being loose or provocative because she's wearing a certain attire,
Right.
right?
And because now we're sexualizing, like, especially when like with you, like you said you were 12 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we sexualizing 12 and 14-year-olds and what they have on? First of all, I mean, let's be clear. Like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I have god kids. I have six god kids. Like, I don't have any kids yet, but I have like six god. Like, and they're getting up there nine. Like, I don't even know what possesses people and whatever. But it's just, but for me, it's like you don't sexualize kids. You don't sexualize adults either, but like you really don't sexualize kids. Like, be clear. I don't care what they have on. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like, please. So I don't care what kind of family you come from. Oh, you gotta have 10-inch skirts or whatever the case is. That's cool. At the end of the day, there's responsibility for all of us to not sexualize everything. These kids. I don't care what they have on.
Yeah. There's a
Period.
responsibility that everybody has. And
Yes.
so,
Yes. Because you teach your kids as best you can to, yeah, okay, to dress properly, right? And to do all of the things that you're supposed to do, right? As a parent. But as the village, as people that's close to the families or whatever the case is, and whatever that is, you're supposed to be the safe space. You're
mm-hmm.
not supposed to be the predator. You are
Yep.
supposed to be the safe space. You're not supposed to be the predator. You're not supposed to be preying on these kids.
Yep.
You're not supposed to be sexualizing these kids. Oh well, they should have had on. No, no, no. They shouldn't have had on. No, nothing.
Yeah.
It's you. Like we, and I'm a little passionate about this because I have godchildren. I have goddaughters. I and I don't want anything like this to happen to them. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want anything like this to happen to any of my friends. I have women friends I've known for years. When they go out, they have a good time. They're adults and they can wear what they want when they want.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give you the right to try
Yep.
to force yourself on them because of what they have on. It does not give you the right.
Yep.
Um, and we're talking about women right now, but listen, men too, boys, men,
Mm-hmm.
boys get sexually abused by both women in the family and men in the family.
Yes.
And then they grow up and they're taught don't say anything, don't communicate, don't express your feelings. You've got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of boys that have been abused, that have grown up to be men that have been abused and that have been taught to say nothing,
Yeah.
be
And
quiet.
I think it's worse for um the men because they it's not masculine, I guess,
Right.
or manly for them to be vulnerable and to share things like that. So I think for to a certain degree, men have it worse than women. It wasn't until the last couple of years that we started hearing of men being being abused. And let me just say this, and I'm going to start with this disclaimer. I am not making excuses, but I will say one of my abusers did tell me that he was molested by somebody in his family, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will actually not somebody in his family, but a woman that he knew. Again, not making excuses, but
Mm-hmm.
it does happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
It does happen, and I would say that men have it the worst because, I think most recently we hear like Tyler Perry, right, who came out within the last couple of years, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Common also. So I think it also happens to men, but the reason why it's important for Tyler Perry and a Common to talk about these things because it opens the door for men to share
Yep.
because it's not men don't talk about things like that
No.
because
And
and why they don't talk about things like that is because they
mm-hmm.
have not been given the safe space to talk about things like that, like we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about.
and and also the difference is if if a guy's in school, he's a teenager. He could be 13 or 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you because you hear about this in the news, high school teacher sleeps with a teenager or one of her students.
Mm-hmm.
That boy is like he's a hero. Oh my god, I can't believe you slept with the teacher. No, he was
Yep.
abused.
Yep.
He was abused. It's facts.
Yep.
Because if that was a 14-year-old girl and a high school teacher male, it's abuse,
It's abuse. Yeah.
right? So one, we've got to start changing the language. We got to start changing the language and also how we view men and when it comes to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not cool. Like just because a dude plays high school ball at 15 And then somebody who's a 25-year-old woman wants to sleep with him, and now he's the man.
Mm-hmm.
But if a
Mm-hmm.
25-year-old man wants to sleep with a 15-year-old girl, that's rape.
Yeah,
And it is. It's
it is.
fact.
Yep.
But the 25-year-old woman that slept with the 15-year-old, that's rape too. I don't care how good he plays ball. I don't care how many points he puts up. I don't care how many touchdowns he scores or whatever he
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's gonna be a number one college recruit. If he's underage and you're over the age, it's
Mm,
rape.
it's rape. I wanted to talk a little bit about preventive measures. So,
Mm-hmm.
which leads me into um my book that's coming out in the fall.
Oh, let's go. Okay,
So,
okay. New book alert. New book
yes.
alert. Let's go. Okay. I want to hear
Um,
about this book.
The Silent Cries of a Black Girl is the
Ooh,
title of it, and
I
it's
love the
more.
title, by the way.
Thank you. It's more of a guide for parents, for caregivers, for counselors, for social workers, anybody who has a role working with young girls, young teen girls. And it's not only my story in detail, but it's also signs for people to pay attention to recognize in the possibility that the girl that you are working with may have been sexually abused or molested. So
Wow.
I'm really excited about that book because I think preventive is and catching it early is it's really really important. And one of the things that I talk about is the rapport that parents need to have with their daughters, right? Just
Mm,
building relationship or how was your day, and who are you going out with, and knowing your daughter's friends, and having opportunities for to share, like having open conversations with your children, and that's a key part of preventive. So
for
you know when something is wrong, you'll know when the behavior changed. And I also share in the book that I was a very quiet child.
mm,
So because I had working parents, right? My parents didn't particularly know that something was really wrong because I was
right.
very reserved. I was
Mm,
to myself. So just being aware and being aware of the signs helps to, you know, probably assist this young lady into getting the support. And what does support look like, as we talked about a little bit in regards to seeking therapy and having support. And maintenance is that I'm still going to go to therapy, I'm still going to be a part of my support group. When I have a setback, right, I'm going to go back and seek the support that I need. So maintenance is really important, and it helps you continue to heal. But I'm excited about the Silent Cries. And the reason why it's entitled The Silent Cries, because we have so many young girls, we have so many women and men, as we
mm,
just finished sharing, who are not talking about what they have gone through. So
mm,
they're walking they're still walking with their trauma.
mm,
So if you think about the many ways a person can be traumatized, and the traumas that they have gone with, if you think about us as a collective
mm.
society, the traumas we have dealt with COVID, that's a big deal. That's a big
Huge,
trauma. So
huge.
imagine, and that's why we're in the mental health crisis now,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, therapy centers are like they're overbooked because we have gone through COVID and still in COVID, and people are not okay, and they're
No.
seeking support, which is what you're supposed to do, which I think is awesome. But that's it continues to be a trauma. And so
Mm,
imagine just walking with your trauma that happened to you years ago, and you've
mm,
never talked about it at all. So that's where the word the silent cries comes from, because a lot of times we are silent about what happened to us until one day we decide today is going to be the day that I talk about it. Today is going to be the day.
mm,
That was for me. That was
mm.
for me the day that I had to write a note on, because I couldn't tell my mom, right? I couldn't verbalize it. So today for me, it was like, today is the day I'm going to say something about it, whether I write it or not. And that's what I did. I decided to write a note and leave it under her makeup compact so she could see it when she got home.
Wow. Wow.
I was so scared. I was more scared, and what drove me was fear.
Wow.
I was so scared of what
Hmm.
he was going to do next to me that I said, today is the day. So for anybody, any survivor who was listening, let today be your day. Let today be your day.
Wow. And I think that we're gonna end this on that note. Let
Mm-hmm.
today be your day. Um,
Today be your
and that's
day.
powerful because it's true. You gotta start somewhere. So let today be your day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, looking forward to the new book alert. I mean, do you want to give a date yet, or do you just want to leave that a secret until you come?
So I don't have an exact date, but I
Okay,
will say
okay.
October 2022. It should be coming out. The Silent Cries of a Black Girl. That's the title.
The silent cries of a black girl. I'm looking forward to supporting. I'm looking forward to purchasing. And these are the kind of books that you need to go and purchase and buy for others. Like get them into centers. Like if you know schools, community centers, nonprofit organizations, this isn't a book to just keep to yourself. This is a book that people need to get. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? To begin this healing process. So definitely please support this book. I could probably tell you it's definitely going to be amazing. And it needs to be in all the schools. It needs to be in the nonprofits, and it needs to be in the community centers. Buy the books and donate. Buy the books and donate. I was looking for donations and where can we donate things to? One, you can support this amazing human being right here and this amazing counselor who always, puts herself on the line. Being a counselor is not easy. Being a therapist is not easy. You intake a lot, but she put her heart, her soul into her first book, and I know she put her heart and soul in the second book, and it's very vulnerable. So one, you can absolutely support this beautiful Black queen right here, and then also you can also help other Black girls too that look just like her begin their healing journey. So again, Saya, appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate everything that you are for the community, to the world.
Thank
You are doing an amazing job. Please go follow her on all her platforms that she is going to give you in just a second. But just want to give you your flowers. Like you are amazing. You are like a survivor, yes, but you're a warrior too. You are for the community. You are for us, and I definitely appreciate you. And I know other people do as well, but if nobody tells you, you are appreciated and you are loved
you.
unconditionally.
Thank you.
So, with that said, please tell the people where they can find you. On all social media platforms. Give them your website, and where they can get the book once it does come out.
Okay. So you can follow me, Saya B. Hagen, on Instagram and Facebook, on TikTok, and on YouTube. If you are interested in having a workshop for your girls' organization or you want to know more, you can always go to my website, sayabhagen.com. I do also have resources there. I also want to let you know that I am doing another survival workshop on August 21st at 1 p.m. in Cunningham Park. It is called Time Triggers and Tools. So maybe you may know somebody who can benefit from that. Please share the information. They have to register on my website, but it is free. It's a free workshop, but you just have to register. Um, the book, I believe, is going to be available on Amazon, or you can just order directly. You can just message me. So that is all. Thank you.
Perfect. Again, it was an honor and a pleasure having you on this particular show, part two of our show. And this time, it definitely felt better because I can do stuff like this with family. I've interviewed a lot of people in these first three seasons, but it's definitely really cool when you can do it with family.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
so definitely appreciate you. And I look forward to working with you more in the future.
yes. Same here. Thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys and tune in Next week, another episode of Conversations of the Heart. It's going to be another great one concerning money management and building money mindset. It's going to be absolutely amazing. That's it, man. It's your boy T Till. Thank y'all for tuning in. Peace.